Funny thing about life, some words come and go, easy to ignore, easy to forget. But every now and then, there's a message that doesn't circle back, a moment that won't repeat itself. It slips in quietly, almost fragile enough to miss. And if you're not paying attention, it's gone. No rewind, no replay, no second chance. It's not the kind of message that begs. It doesn't scream, it just stands there for a breath, waiting to see if you'll notice. And the truth is, this one was never meant to appear twice. Some moments never return, but people live like they've got an endless supply. They waste time, they waste chances, they waste opportunities as if tomorrow is guaranteed, as if life owes them a second try. But the cruel joke is, it doesn't. Time doesn't care how unprepared you feel. It doesn't care how scared you are. It doesn't care how many excuses you stack up. When a moment passes, it doesn't stop to ask if you're ready. It just leaves quietly, without looking back. And no matter how much you beg, no matter how much you regret, that exact moment never comes again. That's the part people never want to face. They tell themselves, next time, tomorrow, when I feel stronger, when I have more. But what if there is no next time? What if the one shot you had to speak, to act, to change, was already in your hands, and you let it slip because you thought life was generous with second chances? That's how it works. You never realize how rare a moment was until it's already gone. The past is full of ghosts like that. Conversations you should have had but didn't. Risks you should have taken but avoided. Words you swallowed. Opportunities you ignored. Doors you let close. And once they're gone, they haunt you. Not because you didn't know what to do, but because you did. And you still didn't move. That's the sting. You weren't ignorant, you were hesitant. You waited too long, thinking the moment would wait for you. But moments don't wait. They move on without mercy. Some moments never return, because they're not supposed to. They were designed for you, here, now, and once they pass, they belong to memory. You can try to recreate them. You can try to chase them, but it's never the same. You can apologize later, but it won't carry the same weight as if you had spoken then. You can try again later, but the timing, the opening, the alignment, it won't be what it was. Life doesn't recycle its best gifts. It offers them once, and only once. And maybe that's the point. Maybe it's the rarity that makes a moment powerful. If you knew it would come back around, you wouldn't value it. You wouldn't feel the urgency, the gravity, the sharp edge of now or never. The fleeting nature is what makes it burn into your soul. It forces you to decide. Will you act or will you freeze? Will you step forward or will you stand still? Because once the clock ticks past it, the choice is made for you. Most people learn this too late. They think life is an endless cycle of do-overs, until one day they realize they can't go back. They can't unsay what was said, can't miss what was missed, can't rewind to that one fragile opening that could have changed everything. And then they sit in the wreckage of regret, wishing they had treated the moment like it mattered. But wishing doesn't bring it back. Some moments never return, and that's exactly why you can't sleepwalk through life. You can't keep waiting for the perfect mood, the perfect conditions, the perfect confidence, because the moment won't pause while you prepare. It will come whether you're ready or not, and if you hesitate, it will vanish just as quickly as it appeared. And the cruel part, you won't always know which moments are the ones that matter until later. Which means you have to treat every moment like it could be the one. That's the game life plays. It doesn't tell you which seconds are ordinary and which are history shifting. It hides them in plain sight, disguised as small choices, simple conversations, quiet openings. And if you're not awake, if you're not paying attention, you'll walk right past them. Some moments never return. And the question isn't whether they'll come. It's whether you'll be ready enough to catch them before they slip away forever. A single chance can shift everything, but most people don't believe that. They think change has to be gradual, built brick by brick, slow and steady like a machine grinding forward. But life doesn't always work that way. Sometimes it hands you a single chance, one decision, one moment that carries more weight than years of planning. One step, one word, one leap, and the entire direction of your life bends with it. That's how fragile, how unpredictable, how dangerous opportunity really is. People underestimate the power of one chance because they're blinded by repetition. Every day feels the same, so they assume tomorrow will look like today. They grow numb, waiting for something dramatic to happen, never realizing that the drama hides inside ordinary seconds. A single handshake can introduce you to someone who changes your path. A single yes or no can rewrite your story. A single risk can break the cycle you thought was unbreakable. And yet, because it doesn't arrive with flashing lights, you treat it like nothing. Until later. Until hindsight slices you open with the truth. You had it in your hands, and you let it go. A single chance can shift everything, because timing has its own kind of violence. You don't get to choose when opportunity arrives. It doesn't consult your calendar. It doesn't care if you're ready. It just shows up, sometimes disguised as inconvenience, sometimes cloaked in fear, sometimes looking like nothing at all. And you either grab it or you don't. But if you don't, you can't force it to come back. That's why people choke on regret. They thought the chance would wait for them to feel confident. And by the time they were ready, it was gone. It's funny how one decision can outweigh 1,000 intentions. You can spend years dreaming, years talking about what you'll do, years preparing yourself in the shadows. But all of that means nothing without the single moment where you act. One moment of courage has more power than a decade of hesitation. Because that's how life works. It doesn't reward you for planning. It rewards you for stepping into the unknown when the chance finally appears. But here's the dark side. Most people never know when they're holding that kind of chance. It doesn't come with a warning label. You don't get a voice from the sky saying, "This is it. This is the one." You only realize it after the fact, when the door has already closed. That's why awareness is everything. You have to live sharp, alive, awake. Because the second you drift into autopilot, the moment could slip right past you. And once it's gone, it doesn't turn around. One chance can shift everything, but only if you're willing to risk. Because chances don't feel safe. They don't come wrapped in certainty. They come wrapped in doubt, in fear, in the possibility of failure. That's the price. You want the shift. You have to step into the unknown. You have to take the leap knowing you might fall. And that's why most people never seize it. They'd rather stay comfortable in the prison they know than gamble for freedom they can't see. But think about it. Every story you admire, every person who broke chains, every life that transformed, it happened because of one chance. Someone said yes when it would have been easier to say no. Someone walked away when it would have been safer to stay. Someone spoke up when silence would have been simpler. And that one choice shifted everything. Not gradually, instantly. The tragedy is, most people won't risk missing their chance. And in doing so, they miss it anyway. They bury their lives under someday. They tell themselves they're waiting for the right moment. But the right moment was already here, and they ignored it. One chance. That's all it takes. But only if you're bold enough to see it, brave enough to grab it, and reckless enough to risk losing what you thought was safe. Because safety doesn't shift anything. Risk does. And when the moment comes, when that single chance stands in front of you, everything hangs on whether you act or freeze. Silence hides rare truths, but people run from silence like it's a curse. They fill every second with noise, distraction, chatter, because deep down they're terrified of what silence might reveal. In the quiet, you can't escape yourself. You can't drown out the doubts, the wounds, the whispers that claw at the back of your mind. So you blast music, scroll endlessly. Surround yourself with voices that mean nothing. All so you never have to face the truths that only come alive when the noise dies down. But silence is where the rarest things are found. The truths that don't compete, the truths that don't shout, the truths that wait patiently, buried beneath the chaos. Silence has a way of exposing what's real. It cuts through the performance, the masks, the lies you tell others and yourself. It doesn't flatter you, it doesn't comfort you. It strips you bare, leaves you standing in front of the mirror with nowhere to hide. That's why people avoid it. They don't want to see who they really are, without the static to cover it up. Rare truths live in silence, because silence has no agenda. Noise always wants something from you. Advertisements scream to buy, voices scream to believe, distractions scream to keep you numb. But silence just waits. It doesn't push, it doesn't sell, it doesn't manipulate. It simply holds space until you finally stop running long enough to hear what's been buried inside you all along. And what you hear there can change you, if you're brave enough to listen. The strange thing about silence is that it feels empty at first. But the longer you sit in it, the more it fills with weight. Your thoughts get louder, your heart starts talking. Your instincts sharpen. You start hearing things you ignored before. The regret, the desire, the truth you've been too busy to face. And at first, it's uncomfortable. It burns. It makes you squirm. But that's the sign you've found something real. Because truth doesn't always soothe you. Sometimes it wounds you before it heals you. Most people don't make it that far. The moment silence starts pressing on them, they run back to the noise. They tell themselves they're too busy. They need distraction. They can't afford to sit still. But the real reason is simpler. They're scared of the rare truth silence hides. They'd rather lie shallow in the noise than risk finding something deep in the quiet. They'd rather stay blind than see clearly, because clarity demands responsibility. And silence has a way of demanding it without saying a word. But the ones who dare to sit with silence, even when it feels unbearable, they find what others never will. They find the rare truths that guide, that convict, that strengthen. They find the voice that doesn't belong to the crowd, the clarity that can't be shaken by opinion, the direction that doesn't depend on applause. They discover pieces of themselves they didn't know were missing, and in that stillness, they realize the noise was never telling them the truth. It was only keeping them from it. Silence hides rare truths, but it doesn't hand them to just anyone. You have to earn them. You have to be willing to endure the discomfort, the loneliness, the tension of sitting still in a world that constantly demands movement. You have to be willing to face the shadows inside yourself without flinching. That's why so few ever uncover them. They're too addicted to the noise, too allergic to stillness, too afraid of what they might hear if the distractions fall away. But those truths don't vanish just because you ignore them. They sit there, waiting like a buried treasure that only silence can unlock. And one day, when the noise runs out, when the distractions no longer satisfy, you'll find yourself face to face with the silence you've avoided. And in that moment, if you're brave enough, you'll hear it. The rare truth that was there all along, waiting for you to finally shut out the world and listen. Missed messages leave lasting scars, and the cruel part is, you don't always see the scar right away. At first, it feels small, harmless, like nothing important slipped away. You tell yourself it wasn't the right time, or maybe it didn't matter, or maybe it'll come back again later. But the truth is, some messages only appear once, and when you ignore them, they don't vanish. They echo. They carve themselves into the quiet parts of your mind, and years later, you still feel the sting of what you didn't do, what you didn't hear, what you let slip through your fingers. It's not always the big things that leave the deepest scars. Sometimes it's the simple words you should have said when you had the chance. The apology you swallowed. The encouragement you never gave. The risk you didn't take when everything inside you said you should. Those little moments become ghosts, haunting you long after the moment has passed. And the haunting doesn't come from what happened. It comes from what didn't. From silence where there should have been action. From hesitation where there should have been boldness, from blindness where there should have been awareness. People underestimate how heavy missed messages become. They think life moves on, that time heals all wounds, that forgotten chances disappear into the background. But time doesn't erase what you ignored. It just buries it deeper, until one day it resurfaces when you least expect it. You hear a line, see a face, feel a memory, and suddenly the weight of that missed message comes crashing back. And you realize it wasn't gone. It was waiting. Waiting for you to acknowledge that the chance is over, and the scar is permanent. Scars like that change you. They make you cautious, hesitant, afraid of missing again. Yet somehow they also make you numb. You start living with the ache, pretending it doesn't exist, but it does. It whispers at night, in the quiet moments when you can't distract yourself. It asks you questions you can't answer. Why didn't you act? Why didn't you speak? Why didn't you listen? And no matter how many excuses you give, deep down you know the truth. You let fear or pride or distraction steal something that was meant for you. Missed messages don't just leave scars on your memory. They change the shape of your life. A door that could have opened never did. A path that could have been walked never was. And maybe you build another life. Maybe you keep moving forward, but in the back of your mind, you always wonder what might have been if you had caught it. If you had paid attention, if you had been braver in that one fragile moment. That wondering becomes a weight you carry, a wound you hide but never truly heal. And here's the cruelest part. You don't always know which moments matter until after they're gone. That's why scars cut so deep, because you realize too late that it wasn't just another passing second. It was the second. The one designed to shift everything. The one that won't come back. And by the time you see it clearly, the window is closed. The message has faded, and all you're left with is the mark it left behind. People try to numb those scars with excuses. They tell themselves, it wasn't meant to be. It wasn't my time. Maybe I'll get another chance. But deep down they know better. They know some moments were theirs, and they let them slip away. No excuse, no story, no lie can erase that. The scar remains as proof that they were given something rare and didn't treat it like it mattered. Missed messages leave lasting scars because they remind you of what could have been. They force you to live with the truth that hesitation has consequences, that ignoring the whisper costs more than you thought, that inaction can wound you deeper than failure ever could. And no matter how much time passes, no matter how far you run, the scar follows, not to punish, but to remind you that next time, if there ever is a next time, you can't afford to miss it again. Awareness is the price of change, and most people don't want to pay it. They say they want transformation. They say they want growth. They say they want something different. But what they really want is comfort dressed up as progress. Because awareness costs. It costs you your illusions, your excuses, your lies. It rips the blindfold off your eyes and forces you to see the truth about yourself, about your choices, about the life you've built. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. That's why people avoid it. Ignorance is painful, but it's easier. Awareness. Awareness demands action. The strange thing is, people are often closer to change than they realize. They feel the weight of their mistakes. They feel the frustration of being stuck. They feel the hunger for more. But they never step into awareness, because awareness makes it real. As long as they stay numb, as long as they drown in distractions, they can keep pretending. Pretending it's not that bad. Pretending they'll fix it later. Pretending life will somehow rearrange itself without their effort. But the second they wake up, the second they see clearly, the pretending dies. And with it, every excuse they've been hiding behind. Awareness is brutal. It shows you the cracks you tried to paint over. It shows you the patterns you repeat, the cycles you keep falling into, the lies you've told yourself so many times you started believing them. It strips away the stories, the masks, the performances, and for a moment you're exposed. Vulnerable, naked. You can't blame anyone else. You can't hide behind circumstance. You can't keep pretending you don't know. You know. And knowledge is heavy, because knowledge demands responsibility. But that's where change begins. Not in the wishing, not in the talking, not in the daydreaming. Change begins the moment you become aware, the moment you stop lying to yourself, the moment you admit the truth you've been running from. That awareness cuts deep, but it also cuts open the possibility of something new. You can't heal what you won't face. You can't grow past what you refuse to acknowledge. You can't transform while still asleep. Awareness wakes you up, and it hurts, but it also frees. Most people live their entire lives avoiding that cost. They build routines, distractions, little cages of comfort, all designed to keep them from seeing too much. They chase entertainment, chase business, chase noise, because silence would force them into awareness, and awareness would force them into change. So they stay blind, because blindness feels safer. But safe doesn't change you. Safe keeps you stuck, circling the same patterns, suffering the same pain, telling the same lies until time runs out. Awareness is the price of change, and once you pay it, there's no going back. You can't unknow the truth. You can't return to ignorance. Once you see the chains, you can't pretend you're free. Once you see the cracks, you can't pretend the mask is flawless. Once you see what you've been avoiding, you either rise and change or sink under the weight of knowing you refuse to. That's why awareness feels like a burden, but it's really a gift. Because it forces you to stop drifting and start deciding. The question is, are you willing to pay the price? Are you willing to face the discomfort of seeing yourself clearly, of confronting the lies, of admitting the truth? Because if you are, you unlock the possibility of change. If you're not, you stay trapped. People think change is about strength, but it isn't. It's about honesty. Brutal, unflinching honesty. And honesty only comes when you step into awareness. That's the trade. You lose the comfort of ignorance, but you gain the power of transformation. You give up the safety of lies, but you gain the strength of truth. You sacrifice the numbness of distraction, but you gain the clarity to finally move forward. Awareness is the price of change. And until you're willing to pay it, you'll keep repeating the same cycles, stuck in the same pain, pretending you don't know why. But deep down you do. You always did.